Hello friends, hello dear students. Today we can start with the next part of scope of anatomy and the physiology. I am Dr. Vishal Gulecha with this particular third lecture. So today we can discuss about the body cavities and the membranes. Basically, body contains major two cavities. First one is a dorsal and second one is a ventral. So basically, dorsal is subdivided into cranial and the spinal cavities, which contain the brain and the spinal cord. Ventral into superior thoracic, which houses the heart and the lungs. I am explain this again into the figure which is into the next slide, but in this particular slide you just try to understand that body contains the two major cavities. First one is a dorsal and second one is a ventral, and dorsal is divided into two. First one is a cranial and second one is a spinal. Now in this particular cranial the presence of brain, and into the spinal cord is there, and that's why the name is a cranial and second one is a spinal. Now into the ventral, again there are the two sides are there, superior thoracic, it means up to the upper part. So this is the ventral. You please observe my hands. So this is the first ventral, the superior thoracic, which houses the heart and lungs, and to the inferior, it means to the back side, there is abdominal pelvic cavity. So here is the presence of liver, digestive system and the reproductive systems. Then there are some walls of ventricular cavity. Basically the walls of ventricular cavities are there, which are covered with the different types of the membranes. For example, suppose we can take the example of balloons. So to the balloons there is some covers are there. So whatever the sensation of the balloons are there, so that types of the membranes are there, and basically that particular membranes, they are as a parietal and the visceral serosi. I again repeat, this is the most important part. Body cavities, they are divided into two types. First one is the dorsal and second one is a ventral. Cranial and the spinal. Into the cranial, presence of a brain. Here is the location of your cranial, and to the back side there is a presence of spinal. So into the cranial, presence of brain, and into the spinal cavities there is a presence of your spinal cord. Ventral, superior thoracic, upper side. So this is the presence of your heart. On the right hand side there is a presence of your right or left, okay, left side of your heart, lungs and inferior abdomen pelvic cavity, which contains the liver, digestive system, reproductive organs. Now into the next slide we can observe the presence of cranial cavity to the upper part. You can observe the upper part, there is a presence of cranial cavity where the presence of brain is there. Then the second one is there, which is a vertebral canal. Vertebral canal where there is a presence of spinal cord, and this particularly combined known as dorsal cavity. Then onto the thoracic cavity. First one is a thoracic cavity, diaphragm. So upper onto the heart there is a one part is there which is known as a diaphragm. Then abdominal cavity and pelvic cavity. Abdominal cavity, pelvic cavity combinedly known as abdominopelvic cavity. So for the simple identification, the color codes are there. So green colors particularly indicates the abdominopelvic cavity where the presence of your digestive system is there, then your livers are there, and finally into the pelvic cavity there is a presence of reproductive organs are there. So already we discussed into the last session male reproductive system and the female reproductive system. So from the thoracic cavity and the abdominopelvic cavity combinedly known as ventral cavity. So this is the first organization of body. Then again into the next figure you can observe that there is a presence of right lung, mediastinum. You can please observe mediastinum, then left pleural cavity, right pleural cavity, pericardial cavity, and presence of the heart. So again this particular upper part, whatever you can observe into the dotted line, there is a presence of thoracic cavity. Now in that particular thoracic cavity, presence of a heart, lungs and inferior abdominopelvic cavity. I again repeat, into the thoracic cavity, presence of a heart, lungs and inferior abdominal pelvic cavity, which present into the abdominopelvic cavity, which contains liver, digestive system and reproductive organs. Last figure is the same, this particular figure is also same, only this is a ventral or the front side, anterior side. So you can observe the right lung is there, right pleural cavity is there, pericardial cavity is there, particularly the location of the heart is there, mediastinum is there, which is the upper part and which is connected to the heart. Then after that the green coloration, which is a particularly abdominal cavity and pelvic cavity. So in this particular figure you can observe nearer to the heart and just beneath to the abdominal cavity there is a presence of one phragm, a thin line is there. So that particular thin line is known as a diaphragm. Now the main two membranes are there, already we can discuss, there are the two membranes are there. First one is a parietal membrane is there and visceral membrane is there. So in this particular membrane, the parietal serosa forms the outer wall of the cavity. Now the serous membranes are there, into the medical language it is called as a serosa. Now what is that particular serosas are there? We can go with the first next slide, then again come back to first slide. Now you can observe that our hold hand is there. So that particular holding of your whole full fingers, when you can combine all the full fingers and create a fist, so that particular fist size is nothing but your heart shape. So when that particular fist you can insert it into a Fallon balloon, so that particular outer balloon wall is nothing but your parietal serosa and inner wall is nothing but your visceral serosa. Hope I tried to give the justification for the serosa. Outer membrane is what? Parietal serosa. When that particular fist is inserted into the balloon in this fashion, when you can hold this particular one, so that particular fist is outer membrane of this particular fist is known as a parietal serosa and the inner wall is known as a visceral serosa. Now again we can jump for the last slide. So in this particular slide you can observe that the red coloration, particularly the red coloration is a heart and just outer membrane is a parietal pericardium. Peri means outer. What? Simply how we can try to remember, peri means outer. So outer layer of any organ is known as a peri. Perimembrane is there. So now this particular membrane is a concern with the heart and that's why it is known as a pericardium. Card means concern with the heart and that's why the name is given as a pericardium. Then the next one is there, pericardial cavity. It means a hollow space is there. So whenever you can observe the hollow space, that particular space is nothing but the cavity. So there is a presence of pericardial cavity with a serous fluid. So into the body, whenever you can observe any types of the cavity, at that time there is a presence of some fluids are there and as per the location of the organs, the fluids having a different name. Now this particular pericardial cavity contains the fluid and that particular fluid is known as a serous fluid. Okay, then after that the inner part is there which is known as a visceral pericardium. Outer parietal, inner visceral. Okay, now this is for the heart. Same for the lungs. Lungs particularly pleural. For the heart parietal or pericardial and now for the lungs it is known as a pleural. And peritoneal, it is concerned with the abdominal. You can observe this particular three words: pericardial, heart, pleural, lungs. and peritoneal abdominal. So this is an easy way to understand the terminology in concern with the body cavities. So you can observe again the figures. Parietal pleural is there, pleural cavity is there. Now again this particular pleural cavity is filled with the serous fluid. Then after that the inner layer, it is known as a visceral pleural. Whenever the word is a pleural, it is concerned with the lungs, and just beneath to the visceral pleural there is a red coloration indicates diaphragm into the figure. Okay, so you can observe the presence of lungs are there. Basically into the body there are the lobes of the lungs, lobes of the liver, and into the body particularly right side lung and left side lungs are there. Hope I am clear. Now we can move on to the 8 number slide. Now into the 8 number slide we can now shift to the thoracic and abdominopelvic membranes. Now already I explained what is meant by membrane. The membrane is like a balloon. Whatever the sensation of the balloons are there, so same sensation is concerned with the membrane, and basically it is a bilabal layer, very soft thin tissue is there, and that is known as a membrane. Now whenever it covers the visceral organ, it means what? Vital organs, the membrane is known as a visceral membrane. That particular membrane is known as visceral membrane, and when it covers the lines of the body cavity, it is known as a parietal membrane. I again repeat, membrane it is on the soft and the thin bilabal layer. It means a very thin, उसको हम हिंदी में बोलते हैं कि बहुत पतला लेयर रहता है वो. तो जो पतला लेयर रहता है, जो भी कुछ विसरल ऑर्गन्स रहेंगे, तो उसके ऊपर का जो कुछ मेम्ब्रेन रहेगा उसको हमको क्या बोलना है? विसरल मेम्ब्रेन. और जो लाइंस रहेगी बॉडी कैविटीज की लाइंस, फॉर एग्जांपल दिस पर्टिकुलर लाइंस, सो दैट पर्टिकुलर लाइंस is known as a parietal membranes. Okay, and the space between the visceral and the parietal, there is a cavity is there, and that particular cavity is known as a serous, and in that particular serous cavity presence of the fluid is there, and that particular fluid is known as serous fluid, and this particular fluid is required for the lubrication. जैसे for example whenever the vehicle starts, the engine works. How the engine gets work? Because with the help of presence of the oil is there. So that particular oil works for the process of lubrication, for the softening. Same thing is there. The serous fluid is required for the process of lubrication. Now there are some specific names for the every membranes for the heart, lungs and the abdominal organs. We already discussed that the parietal is there, pleural is there, and the abdominopelvic is there. So the serous membranes of the lungs. Now when you can observe the lungs, at that time 100% the word is there pleural. So the membrane of the surface of the lung is called as visceral. So already into the last slide we discussed, whenever the surface is there, it is concerned with the visceral, and whenever the lining is there, at that time parietal. So that's why into the next sentence, the membrane that lines the cavity into the lungs is known as a parietal pleura. It is known as a parietal pleura. Then next definition, the space between these two membranes, it means visceral pleura and the parietal pleura, is known as serous fluid. Now the serous membranes of the heart. So instead of pleural, you have to use the word pericardium. That's it. So first definition, the membrane on the surface of the heart is known as visceral pericardium. The membrane that lines the cavity in which the heart is located is known as parietal pericardium. The space between the visceral pericardium and the parietal pericardium is known as serous fluid or the serous fluid, which is required for the process of lubrication. Next, the membrane on the surface of liver, stomach, reproductive is known as a visceral peritoneum because it is now concerned with the abdominal. Then the membrane that lies the abdominal cavity is known as a parietal peritoneum. The space between visceral peritoneum and parietal peritoneum is known as peritoneal cavity, which is filled with the serous fluid. Now there are some basic processes. So into the first lecture, whenever at that time the discussion of the endocrine system is there, and in that particular system I was told that we can discuss the metabolism into the next session. So here is then the metabolism means what? It is in the process of sum of the process. It means all the sum of chemical processes that occurs into the body. Whatever the chemical processes which are occurs into the body is known as a metabolism. Now there are the two basic types are there. First one is a catabolism and second one is a anabolism. Catabolism means what? Cata means a breakdown. Cata means what? Breakdown. Here and the breakdown of the chemical substances into the simpler components. For example, digestion of the proteins into the amino acids. Now how the digestion of the proteins are there? With the regular diet. So from the diet we obtain the proteins, and that particular proteins they are converted into the amino acids. So this is the first process which is known as a catabolism. So try to remember, cata means a breakdown, and the process of breakdown of chemical substances into the from complex to the simple. Then the second one is there, anabolism. Ana means up, it means building. So the building of complex substances from smaller simpler components. For example, use of amino acids to build the proteins. First one is a catabolism and second one is a amino acids. Second one is a anabolism. So into the catabolism, breakdown of the proteins into the amino acids, but into the anabolism, from amino acids to build the new proteins in these fashions. Okay, then the next definition is there, responsiveness. Responsiveness means what? The body detects and respond to the changes. For example, whenever the changes into the body systems are there or body is there, immediately we aware. For example, fever. Now fever is a God gift to the human beings. So whenever fever is there, we can observe, yes, we are suffering from the any type of the body dysfunction. So this is known as a detect and respond to the changes. Then after that, the movement. It includes the motion of the whole body, individual organ or single cells. Okay, then the growth is there. It is in the increase in the body weight with the body size. Increase in the body size with the body weight. So for example, first kid is there, child is there, adult is there, and finally geriatrics patients, geriatrics are there. So in this fashion, the development of the human being is there. This is simply known as a growth. Growth means what? Increase in the body size with the increase into the weight. Then differentiation. It is a development of the cell from unspecialized to the specialized state. Reproduction. Already we can know what is meant by reproduction. Formation of the new cell or the production of the new individual, which is the formation of the fetus. Now this is the most important concept up to the end of life. This particular concept everybody try to remember, which is known as a homeostasis. Very important one is there, because whatever the control of our body is there, so that particular controlling of the body is nothing but the process of homeostasis. So what is exact definition is there? Self-sustaining mechanism. What? Self-sustaining mechanism, and it is a controlled with the help of two systems. First one is the nervous system and second one is the endocrine system. From the endocrine system, there is a release of the hormone, and the release of the hormone is a control and regulate with the help of nervous system. So all of you, we aware what is the major organs into the nervous system? Brain, spinal cords, neurons. And into the endocrine system, the major organs are like different types of the glands, for example pituitary gland, adrenal gland, thymus gland. So whatever the hormones they are secreted from the endocrine system, that is particularly regulate and control with the help of nervous system. So homeostasis means what? It is a simply self-sustaining mechanism in which organism tries to maintain stable internal condition. Here organism means a human being. Yeah, we have to consider organism means human being, because this particular definition is important for the both animal as well as for the human being, and that's why the common term is used as a organism. So it can maintain the stable internal conditions, and without the homeostasis organism would not able to have stable internal conditions and therefore would not able to survive. अगर हम जिंदा रहना चाहते हैं तो हमारा इंस्पिरेशन एक्सपिरेशन बराबर चलना चाहिए, ब्लड का फ्लो प्रॉपर होना चाहिए, हर एक बॉडी पार्ट को क्या ब्लड क्या होना चाहिए, अच्छी तरह से पहुंचना चाहिए. अगर कोई भी एक सिस्टम में गड़बड़ हो जाती है तो आदमी क्या कहलाता है, बीमार. सो दैट इज़ नथिंग बट योर homeostasis, and it is a control with the help of homeostasis. Homeostasis is a control with the help of nervous system as well as with the help of endocrine system. Now it is and the continually disturbed. This particular homeostasis is a continuously disturbed by the two factors. First factor is the external and second factor is the internal. Now external factor is concerned with the environment. Environment, for example, what? Summer condition is there, heat gets increased. Okay, at that time there is a lack of oxygen into the environment is there. So body demand more oxygen and requires some cool sensation basically into the summer season. Vice versa, into the winter season the climate is totally different from the summer. Into the environment there is a cold temperature is there and enough oxygen is present. So at that time body needs heat. So that is nothing but your external stimuli. Now internal stimuli, it means whenever there is a disturbance into the body systems or disturbance into the organ. So I give a very simple example, acidity. This is the best simple example. There is an increase into the HCl level into the body. So whenever we have high food intake, at that time we generally suffers from the acidity. So at that time generally what we can take? Some antacids. So again it can go to the normal state. So that is nothing but your internal stimuli. Then again many times the psychological stresses are there, exercise are there, and mainly disruption of mild and temporary. Now what is that particular disruption? Mild and temporary means what? For example, मेरा कल रिजल्ट लगने वाला है, क्या होगा, हाँ क्या होगा, फेल हो जाऊंगा या पास हो जाऊंगा. सो दैट इज नथिंग बट यूर टेम्पररी डिस्ट्रप्शन. माइल्ड मीन्स व्हाट? जस्ट फॉर दिस, अरे यार वो सर ने डांट दिया, क्या होगा. So this is nothing but your mild disruptions. So that is why if your homeostasis is not maintained, there may be a chances the patient may die, and that's why the homeostasis is a major step for the human beings. So keep in mind, my dear students, the homeostasis is controlled with the help of nervous system and the endocrine system. So what is the solution? Because in our family geriatric patients are there, our father, mother. So to maintain the homeostasis, always remember, go with the some meditation for yoga, so that will maintain our homeostasis. If your central nervous system is stable, your nervous system is stable, your hormonal control will be regular. If your nervous system is not stable, then there is a disturbance into your hormones level, and once it will disturb your homeostasis. Okay, so into the next, how we can control the homeostasis. Homeostasis is generally occur because whenever there is a disturbance between the external and internal environment, it means external and internal stimuli. So basically we already discussed that it is regulated by the nervous system and endocrine system, which are acting together or independently. I give a very best example for this particular control of homeostasis. Now you can observe when the lady into the first trimester, it means when she aware she is a pregnant, at that time in the first trimester she is very happy. But when the stages are changed from first trimester to second trimester to the third trimester, at that time there is an increase into the weight concerned with the body, because now she has to carry herself with a one more. Okay, so at that time hormones are required more. So whatever the food consumed by the that particular lady is again goes to that particular fetus with the help of umbilical cord. So you can observe the lady who is a pregnant, she required more diet. Yes or no? So at that time, into the last semester particularly, happiness is there. Very happiness is there because the new birth come. Happiness is there, but at the same time there may be into the mind if anything gets wrong. So that particular situation is nothing but the homeostasis. Okay, it means what? At the same time your body particularly controlled both fetus as well as that particular lady. Okay, then again the second example is there. So whenever we are into the stress situations, you can observe basically into the examination time, generally most of the students having a habit one night study, एक रात का स्टडी रहता है बहुत लोगों का. So into the one night study what happen, if into the paper, question paper is some puzzle one, that particular student not recognize, so stress gets increase, whatever that particular stress gets increase. अब क्या लिखूं? Okay, and when he tried to recall and write something, at that time the stress get reduced. Once the paper get finished and he writes, suppose that 80 marks paper is there and he write about 75 marks, अरे कुछ नहीं भाई, 75 मार्क्स का लिख दिया, 5 मार्क्स का नहीं आया, छोड़ दिया, लेकिन पास में हो जाऊंगा. So that particular condition is known as homeostasis. Hope you understand what is a homeostasis. You everybody see the movie माला माल वीकली, yes or no? उसका एक इंसिडेंट सुनाता हूँ मैं. परेश रावल लॉटरी बेचता है, लॉटरी के टिकट बेचता है. तो क्या होता है कि एक बंदे को लॉटरी लग जाती है. जैसे उसको लॉटरी लगती है तो वो फ़ोन करता है कि भाई तेरी लॉटरी लग गई, एक शेयर की तुझे लॉटरी लग गई. वो क्या हो जाता है, बहुत उससे बहुत ज़्यादा खुशी हो जाती है और वो खुशी कंट्रोल नहीं कर पाता और उसकी वजह से उसकी क्या हो जाती है, डेथ. अभी ये खुशी की वजह से डेथ हुई क्या नहीं, उसको क्या आया तब, कार्डियक अरेस्ट, बिकॉज वो उसका जो कंट्रोल था होम्योस्टेसिस के ऊपर वो नहीं संभाल सका. तो उसे क्या बोलना है आप लोगों को, होम्योस्टेसिस. इट मीन्स टू कंट्रोल द बॉडी एक्टिविटी. होप यू अंडरस्टैंड. सो nervous system detect the changes and send the signals to the nerve impulses to counteract the disruptions, whereas the nerve impulses cause the rapid changes. Hormones usually work more slowly. Now there are the some, in this way we can finish the in this way we can finish the homeostasis. The next parts is a anatomical terminology. Basically these are required for your next topics. Directly the questions or directly the words are there, posterior, anterior. So for this one you try to remember this is the front side. So first definition is there, anatomical position. So from this particular position we try to give the different types of the terminology. Anatomical position means what, standing erect. For example, whenever all you guys are stand for the national anthem, so that particular position is nothing but your anatomical position. Okay, so standing erect, face forward, upper limbs at the sides and palms are forwards, like the photograph. You can observe the image. Now, when you can observe that particular figure, superior means what? Above. Inferior means below. It means superior is a above, inferior is a below. Anterior front, posterior back. Ventral front, dorsal back. Middle, medial, central, lateral side. Ipsilateral, same side. Contralateral, other side. Proximal, closer to the trunk, and distal, farther from the trunk. Superficial, surface, deep, internal. So what you guys have to do? You have to prepare a one table, and in that particular table you have to try to remember this particular words, because this particular definition you have to remember. There is no option to remember the definitions. Now the next one is what? There are the some body planes are there, and that particular body planes and the sections. So when we can cut into the sections along with the flat surfaces, they are called as a plane. Okay, the flat surface is known as a plane. Okay, now you can observe, you can only observe, it is also known as a coronal and it is also known as a cross sections. Now this is a figure. Okay, so you can observe from the collarbone, the frontal plane is there. Okay, so this is your collarbone. So this particular position is when I can stand in this particular one. So this you can please observe. So this particular one is known as frontal plane. Now this onto the opposite side, the section is there which is known as a mid sagittal plane. What is that particular plane is known as? Mid sagittal plane. Then after that the transverse plane, which is also known as cross section. You simultaneously please observe the figure. Then after that there is a frontal section through the torso. Okay, then median, media sagittal section. So these are the some body planes. So simply body planes. So in this fashion, body planes, transverse sections. So we can move for the definitions. You please continuously observe the figures. I first start with the first definition. The first definition is what? Sagittal cut. What is the first definition? Sagittal cut. What is meant by sagittal cut? Mainly the body divides into the right and to the left, into the right and into the left. So that is nothing but your sagittal cut. So in this particular one, median is there. So that particular median is nothing but the media sagittal plane. It means what? The body divides into the right hand side and the left hand side is known as a median or media sagittal. Second one is there, transverse cut. Second definition, transverse plane or the transverse cut. Transverse plane, it is also known as horizontal. So body divides into superior and inferior, above and below, horizontal. Okay, above and below, this is known as transverse. Then next one is there, which is a coronal. Okay, coronal or the frontal plane. Coronal means what? Body divides into anterior and posterior, that is known as a coronal. Then after that, cross section. You can observe at to the end there is a cross section is there. Cross section means what? The body cut at exactly 90 degrees to the long axis of the object is known as a cross section. Then oblique section. Next definition is what? Oblique section. You please observe simultaneously the figure. All the definitions are there or the words are there. I clear the definition. Oblique section, cut an angle across the object is known as an oblique section. Okay, then after that, longitudinal section. Longitudinal means what? Body cut the axis of an object. Body cut. The long axis of the object is known as longitudinal. Now these are the definitions you can observe. These are the definitions. Now into the next one, you can observe this simple figure. Right hypochondric region, left hypochondric region. It means what? The body into the right and left side. It means this particular region after the sagittal cut. First one is what? After the sagittal cut, right and the left. Right hypochondric region and the left hypochondric region. Now into the middle. Into the middle there is a presence of epigastric region, umbilical region, hypogastric region. Then right lumbar region, left lumbar region, right iliac region and left iliac region. So this particular figure is only for your demonstration. So when we can take these sections, same sections you can observe in your body also. Right, left. Okay, then after that the transverse, coronal, then cross section, oblique section and longitudinal sections. So these sections are important to study the organs, to study the system, to study the different types of the processes. Then after that you can observe into the picture the otic, cephalic. It means only the names. I try to give the names of your human body, right and left. Now always you have to remember as per the planes and the sections. I again repeat, the first section is the sagittal cut or the sagittal plane. Second one is their transverse. Transverse is also known as a horizontal. Third one is a coronal cut. Okay, coronal, it is also known as a frontal. Then cross section, oblique section and the longitudinal section. And according to that you can observe this particular figure: ear, head, nose, forehead, cheek, chin. So in this fashion the names of the body parts. So this is the anterior side. Am I clear? Now into the next slide we can observe the posterior. Back to the head: occipital, acromial, vertebral. So in this fashion the first figure is anterior and the second one is a posterior. So in this particular one you can observe, you can try to stand and give your body parts names. So in this way today we can finish the first topic, scope of anatomy and physiology. Hope all guys you can enjoy this particular lecture.